What a wild day in the markets again. We will start with the general markets. We will get to crypto, of course. That was the headlines so far the whole week. I thought it'd be gold and silver and the Dow, but actually it's crypto, it's FTX, it's Binance, it's all the stuff you've read, and of course it's impacting the markets. But let's start off with the Dow. I like to keep to the same order of assets and markets. And also, the markets are bigger than crypto, so let's stick with the same chronology. So, Dow Jones rather than SPY and Nasdaq. Dow Jones, remember this downtrend line? It all looked beautiful. This was resistance after all. It popped up above this sort of local resistance, but the general downtrend line so far looks to have been resistance, and everything looks good as it's all green. But as soon as we start taking out these sort of 31,000 zones, it will start looking very bearish, at which time it will be a bit too late to recognize it. But anyway, Dow Jones resistance so far is holding. Let's look at the SPY, which has been weaker than the Dow Jones. That's also looking weak. So we hit resistance over here. We never took it out again. And I said we'd go back up. We recognize that this was a bit of a doji and a bit of a move back up, but I thought we might struggle to get up here. If we did, that's what this was for. The next resistance would be here. To be honest, we struggled early on. Today, big red candle, -2%. A lot of people are ignoring how far down the markets are, because crypto's, down 14, 15% or whatever, or double digits for 2 days in a row. But you've got all the markets down basically more than 2% on average. That's a big red day. And one more of those days, and we're looking to test the lows again. And I think we have every reason, every excuse, every catalyst to make new lows, which is what I said, even though we were going all the way up. So Dow Jones, very, very strong for a while. Sorry, but we're on our way all the way back down, in my opinion. The SPY, I think it's easier to tell we're going to test our lows again, especially if we start taking out this 369 zone. Then we're going to have to test 357. The Nasdaq, I don't need to convince anyone here. This is triple flush on the ascending. One more day, we take out 25, call it 259, and we are testing the lows in 1 or 2 days. Literally, it could be tomorrow. It could be tomorrow if you think about how tight the Nasdaq and the Bitcoin and the tech world, they're all one big family unit. And look, we closed at the low of day, 2.5%. And look at the rally it did. You know what I mean? Look at the Dow Jones. Look at the Dow Jones. That's a rally. Fair enough. I know it's defensive, it's dividends, and tech has just been the hated child, and for good reason, because it's just been loved for 10 years more, maybe. So Nasdaq very weak, and I think Nasdaq is the key. Even when we look at crypto later, I still think the Nasdaq might be even more important because crypto's done its move. Bitcoin's flushed at 17,500, and it's kind of on its way down on its own. I mentioned this in the last video. It would do this move without the markets, but the Nasdaq making its new lows, that'll guarantee Bitcoin, in my opinion, obviously, that'll guarantee Bitcoin accelerates to the downside, goes to the 12,000 target. I think there's a zone around 10 to 14,000. We'll get to that later, but Nasdaq very bearish. Tomorrow, I don't even know what news is coming up. There must be some news. There's always news. It'll be bad news. And on news, actually, the election results, I think the markets wanted more of a Republican victory to rally, because Republicans are generally better off when it comes to finances, right? Lower regulations, lower taxes, spending restraint. But since they didn't win as much as anticipated, the red wave wasn't as big as a lot of people thought. The markets didn't rally that much off that, so there's always that. But anyway, who cares? The market's down 2.5%, and that is an effect of the results. So finally, the Russell 2000, not the weakest, but not the strongest. And basically 1, 2, 3, 4 days off testing the all-time lows. So we're going all the way back down to test lows. Now, Dow Jones will probably not get to its lows, because I think we'll flush, and then obviously we'll bounce. And maybe when the markets start to bounce after taking these lows out, Maybe the Dow Jones by then will be around its bottom. So Dow Jones might not make a new low for some time, but let's see. Let's see. And the VIX up, not as much as it should be. VIX has been strange. It's like a broken instrument. Um, who knows? I mean, this should be screaming up, to be honest. Especially with what's going on in crypto. So I'm just going to ignore the VIX because it's and a lot of these ETFs are kind of broken. I know that there used to be the TVIX, another ETF I used to trade a long time ago, and that was just pure fraud, to be honest. Just really broken instrument. That's the markets. Let's look at the yields, which, to be honest, have been boring, and I didn't even pay attention today because of the action elsewhere. Okay, so they dropped a little bit, but we're near our all-time highs. 2 year also retracing. 5 year also retracing a bit, nothing too crazy. 10 year still within this tight ascending range. So I said, watch out. If we flush that, who knows? We could go back down to, in this case, 3.9. So this coincides with the dollar being in a tight range. So let's watch for the breakdown, but still not much to comment on. Still within an uptrend, obviously still near its all-time highs and haven't broken down. And the same actually, wait for the British. Okay, that's coming down. That's interesting. Could come even lower. I don't think that's warranted. Actually, I think the British yields should be higher, but so far market looks like it wants to flush this sort of 3.4 zone and come lower for the British yields, but the rest of the European stay high, elevated, just like the US. So those the yields. Let's move to the dollar. The dollar was actually higher, unlike yields. Quite interesting. But I think maybe some people sought safety in bonds, which sends yields down, bit of safety. Um, yeah, and also by going into bonds, the dollar goes up. So dollar up a little bit today. We are bouncing off serious support because had we broken down today, we would have taken out this ascending support and probably started to head lower to the 105 range. So the dollar is still not broken down, but it's weak and it's very close to breaking down. Let's see. Obviously, the resistance, if it does decide to start moving up the next few days, it will be around 113. But I still think that the dollar, I mean, it depends what happens with crypto. If it completely crashes, who knows? You could have a lot of selling of cryptos and people go into dollars. Who knows? The dollar can always rise. That's what happens in chaos. But here's the chart. That's all you need to really watch. I think these trend lines make sense. You don't want to overdraw them, but here in this case, we have three lines. The ascending, which obviously is the most important one because it's very credible. It's hit many times. This one I think is pretty credible too. It's very short term, and this one on the upside definitely recognized. So for me, these three trend lines kind of just draw the whole picture. So let's see what happens tomorrow. If we go up, that's the resistance. If we go down, we flush. First stop 107, 108, sorry, 108. Next stop 105. Obviously not in one go. Let's move on to gold and silver. To be honest, I'm hurrying this one a bit today because I want to get to crypto. Anyway, gold and silver. To be honest, it's a shame that that crypto is doing its move because gold and silver has been spectacular the last few trading days. Now, obviously, we've broken out massively so far. This has been resistance, very obvious resistance. I mean, it was resistance here, here, and again here. So 1720, I said that number a few times. Now, gold and silver have made a massive move, so it's not surprising that it just pauses for a bit. And we could go higher. Depends what the dollar does. It depends what the markets do. But sometimes some asset classes just move on their own. You know, you can have gold and silver go up with the market going up or down, or with the dollar going up or down. So once gold and silver start acting a bit special, like now, you can't you can't discount the fact that they can move regardless of what other influences like the dollar and the market might be doing. So far sideways since this move up. By sideways, I mean a little bit down, but nothing too dramatic. Silver, same sort of move, a little more, but it's always like that. Retrace from its high. Now I sold some yesterday of my miners, so I'm very happy. Some of the miners were down quite a lot. I'll get to that in a second. So, even if I think an asset class, a stock, whatever, will keep going up. If it's worth too much in my portfolio, I will trim it. If it gets to a technical level, even if I think it can go a bit higher, I will still trim it a little bit just in case I'm wrong. But also, I've been doing this a long time, and if it starts going down, you hate yourself. But also, it's just general risk management. It's always better to do what I call the wise thing, because how many times have I regretted it? I think this entire swing here, I missed out, for example, because I was on holiday, and it's just typical. So, yeah, I don't mind this retracement because I'm looking to add, but I don't want to add until we go lower, significantly lower. I still think all the dips will be bought. I do fear missing out, but I've got enough in all the stocks, which is why I actually trimmed some because I had too much. So gold and silver sideways, and you can see we're sort of coming back to breakout here. So totally normal, not at all bearish. For me, this is sideways action, and I'm just happy if it goes up or down, to be honest. Down I add, up I keep trimming to keep the stocks at a certain value. Let's say Newmont, it has to be worth, let's say, $10,000. If it's all of a sudden worth 12,600 because it's gone up, I take out 2,600, it's worth 10,000 again. If it goes back down, I can add what I sold, etc., etc. So that's gold and silver. Obviously, next resistance is here, although it's harder to determine for silver. Now, if it goes back up, it will find a little bit of resistance here at 21.5. But if it goes higher, I find it quite difficult to tell where resistance is. I feel like it's here. And plus, we have the number 22, nice and round, and then 22.5. So I probably have two small sales rather than one bigger one. And I wouldn't be selling silver, I'd be selling the miners. And gold, the next resistance, of course, is the prior resistance where we've just been yesterday. So 1720, a number I said a lot. I also think 1730 will be a bit of resistance. And then the next one, 1760. And after that, 1800. Let's see. Gold miners now, gold and silver miners. Let's start with the GDX. Completely the same as gold and silver. Back down to resistance. So this was resistance. I thought this might be a little bit of resistance. It wasn't yesterday, but today was sort of hovering around there. So it kind of was because it's acting as support. I did actually sell yesterday around the high, so quite happy, kind of in the middle between the two levels I identified. If we go back up, next resistance, obviously it's 27.5 on GDX. I'll be trimming a little bit there, and then next one will be 29 because it was prior support. And then from there, we'll see. That's not a problem. That's a good problem to have. So those are the resistance levels. On the way down, I suppose it's 25. And then we don't want it to go too much lower. That's probably because the market's crashing. Then I would say it's 24, and then it's gap fill 23. GDXJ on the way up, it'll be 33. Resistance on the way up. And then it'll be all the way up here, 35. And if we go higher, well, I guess it's 37 and then 40, a nice number, and it won't go higher than that for a few days. So that's on the way up. On the way down, it'll be 31, 30, 29. Yeah, 31, 30, and 29. Makes sense, round numbers. But if it does start to go this far down, also you have this ascending support, so that would be pretty strong. But you'd want to see what the market's doing, because although I said that we're out of the bottom and we're back into the bull market, it's always been a bull market. It's just been a bit of a drop within a bull market. If you think it's going to go lower, if the market's just completely collapsing because crypto has led the Nasdaq, which has led the Dow to new lows, and GDX and GDXJ is going lower, hold off. Hold off. If you can get it cheaper, why not buy something cheaper? When panic ensues, and plus human emotion will take over. You'll start getting scared. Even the professionals get a bit scared. And that's when it's all about risk management. You don't want to go in too hard. I'd probably go in with like 2% cuts each time, just going in with like 2% of my cash holdings just in this stock, next level, just machine gunning my way in. So as soon as I buy, I really don't mind if it goes lower. I really need to do a video on that stuff, risk management and sort of entry and exits. But anyway, I don't think we're going to go too far down, at least not tomorrow. I do think the markets will collapse, but especially the Nasdaq and crypto. How much will that affect gold and silver? That was something I brought up yesterday because everything looked great, right? Nasdaq, the cryptos were collapsing and gold and silver were up. But I did think maybe a real collapse could send us red. Now, I don't know if this is because of the crypto collapse or if it's just a retracement. It wasn't that dramatic, -3%, -1.5% on the seniors. Not that dramatic if you consider crypto is down like 10, 15, 20% across the board, but small influence, no doubt. I was watching, Bitcoin goes lower, Nasdaq's going lower, takes the SPY down, takes the GDXs down. So it was linked a little bit, and you've got to pay attention to that stuff. So, and I personally think crypto is going much lower, so I wouldn't be surprised if this goes a little lower. Relatively speaking, you're in good hands here. So let's see what happens. The levels have been identified on the way up and on the way down. Let's now finally look at the culprit of the day. Let's look at crypto. I'm not going to bother with other commodities. It's just a little bit too late for me, and I want to keep it focused on the most relevant assets. Bitcoin, as we speak, is under 16,000. Yeah, actually, this descending line, although Bitcoin didn't act as I thought it would or should, when you break out of a descending line like this, which has been credible, and Bitcoin is very technical the way it trades. I mean, this is pretty long term, it's pretty credible, and Bitcoin is a pretty volatile asset. I expected volume and a push up, didn't happen. But on the push down, maybe this acts as a small support. We'll see. But at the moment, it's a very, very sort of dramatic crash. So let's see the levels. I didn't think I'd have to be looking at this, and I haven't actually redrawn my levels in some time. Now, let's look. We don't need to see what crypto is doing now, because where the candles are now, because we know where it is roughly. If we look at Bitcoin, which is hovering here at the moment at let's say 16,000, if we collapse, for me, the next serious support zone is around 12,500. This is, a zone that it had troubles breaking out of, and once it did, it ran all the way up. It ran to 20,000 and then basically just screamed up to 70. So yes, you could say that 14,000, because of this candle here, is support because it was resistance. And if you see this candle here, it's also the point at which when it broke out, it just ran. It pumped, it consolidated, and then that's when it started to do its run. You could look at this zone as important, but we're below that already. We're at 16,000, we're here. So where does it go? Well, it goes, maybe it stops at 14,000, bounces at 1,000. Everyone thinks the bottom's in, but no, it isn't. Goes to, I think this zone is a buy. I think it will go below it, because it's just crazy. But I think around this zone this zone will end up being an area where a bunch of candles hovering, and a bit like this, consolidation zone support will start being formed around there. If I'm wrong and it goes lower, I think 10,000 is the level. That's a very big psychological level. Obviously, they would love to punch that underneath and then have some stops flush out. I mean, imagine it hovers around 12,000, then goes low. A lot of people who buy at 12,000 or even 14,000, their stop is probably going to be at 10,000. I know we have hodlers, but a lot of hodlers have been wiped out. So 10,000 would be a zone also. If that goes, to be honest, if 10,000 goes, I don't see much support. I mean, yeah, you might get a little bit at 8,000, but basically we're going to be talking about 6,000 and 4,000, because this ascending line here that I've drawn, I think that's pretty credible. So, and that's around 5,000, 6,000. For me, it's really 14, 12, 10. I'm not going to say 8. I would say 6, because by the time we start coming down, we'll probably be around here. It's not going to be in one day, is it? It's going to be in sort of quite a few days. I mean, there'll be bounces too. And who knows, this could take some time. I think by the time we get there, this ascending line will be around 6. And I've heard lower numbers. I mean, in the collapse, look at this one here. In the collapse, it can just completely take its own momentum. So then you've got 4,000 basically. This low here of March 2020, the Corona lows, which a lot of other stocks have gone to and gone below. A lot of decent stocks too are below their March 2020 lows. So why not Bitcoin? A lot of people think that the intrinsic value is zero anyway. So we could go to 4,000, which means we could go even to 3,000 because that's where this is. 3,000 is serious support though. You can see it was the resistance here. It became support when it came back down here, and it was support there. So 3 to 4,000 should be extremely strong support. 3 to 4 to 6 to 10 to 12 to 14. I'll probably remember those numbers, but that's what I think about Bitcoin. Let's see, we could have a nice violent bounce back to 17,500 and therefore 18,000. A lot of people will then say, oh, the low is in. And then I would say, oh, look, this acted as support, this descending line. But honestly, even if we bounce, I think the purge is on. And I think we need to get to sort of 12,000 to start really cleansing the area so that new money can come in, or just in general, people feel like the flush has happened, because here, what was happening here, this sideways action, I didn't like it. I couldn't call it. We've got direction, and now you can trade it. So yeah, that's Bitcoin. And to be honest, I'm not going to do all the other coins because the other coins will just follow Bitcoin. Ethereum, what's interesting is that it hasn't taken out 1,000 yet. It hasn't gone below. If you consider Bitcoin is sort of down here, if you were to consider the equivalent move. And then I've got a bunch of other altcoins. I'm not going to go through them. Obviously, Solana is going through hell. The FTT coin is basically inching towards zero. So a lot of altcoins, some good ones are just getting decimated. But I'm not even going to look at Ethereum because basically everything follows Bitcoin. The crypto stocks that I trade, and I own Hive, and I added some Hive a few days ago. That continues to get decimated, which I don't mind because I've got about 10% of what I want in that stock. I need to add a lot more. My last buy was basically a few days ago here, and I thought, well, if Bitcoin flushes, this will go, and that's what happened. And fine by me. I mean, look how much has come down already. So I remember just being all out of this one here, and they did a reverse split, so the numbers have changed. I've traded this one very well through the years, and I was in down here. So I've got a great history with this one. I would love it to come back down to here. And at the time, the low was 10 cents. So Hive is not the only crypto stock. There are others, notably Riot's blockchain. That still hasn't flushed its recent low. So that one's outperforming Hive at the moment. We also have Mara, which is one of the stronger ones. That's also hasn't flushed its lows. That's next. I mean, if the Nasdaq goes down, the general stock market goes down, and Bitcoin keeps collapsing, this will obviously go back down here, and then this will also start to go all the way back down to its all-time lows, and then you can really buy good companies cheap. Now, I don't know actually, good companies I wouldn't call it. I know Hive quite well. I know that's a good company. It's green. It has a good sound balance sheet, but the underlying asset needs to stabilize before they can move up. So otherwise, you have other ones, Bitfarms, that's completely flushed its lows, like Hive, Hut, that's inching towards it, a bit like Mara and Riot. And then the micro strategy, the one everyone's watching because that's Michael Saylor's one. And if that starts to go in the low 100s, people are calling, for bankruptcy, basically, and insolvency, because he has a lot of, is it margin? Is it debt? Is it just exposure? I mean, he's not exactly been the most fiscally conservative when it comes to his investment in the crypto sphere. So he's got to watch out too. I know a lot of people say that Bitcoin has to go to sort of 3,000 for him to get a margin call, but I have a feeling it's not that low. Coinbase, that's basically at its lows. And these are big companies. So the crypto stock world, not the coin world, but the stock world is inching towards their lows and flushing. I think it's great. I mean, for me personally, I'd love to buy some. I've got a lot of cash on the sidelines. and I've wanted to buy this for some time. And to be honest, a lot of people made a lot of money in Bitcoin the last few years, and okay, a lot of people lost some now recently, but the get rich quick scheme is possible through crypto, including the stocks. So yeah, I'll be watching crypto a lot. I think this week, as are a lot of people. So let me know your comments. There aren't that many comments on my channel at all, but maybe the crypto review will spur some comments. Otherwise, gold and silver. Otherwise, anything. Yeah. Otherwise, good luck. Don't get burnt out there. Live to fight another day.